When you partner with Axon, you immediately gain access to a full range of products and solutions designed to meet the complex needs of today's grower. We carry all major brands and sizes of tires and wheels. We specialize in large diameter wheels for large equipment. We have one of the largest OEM replacement wheel inventories in North America. Known for extreme flotation setups, duals, and triples, we have wheels for all makes and models of tractors, sprayers, combines, and grain carts. If we don't have the wheel in stock, we'll custom build, sandblast, and paint in-house. There isn't a more vast inventory in North America dedicated to helping dealers move more iron. With facilities on the West Coast and in the heart of the Midwest, leverage our 230,000 square feet of indoor inventory to solve any problem a grower may have. Move more iron with Axon.
Moving iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. This Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by Anvil AppWorks, and I got Jason Hoult back here with me. Jason, how you doing, man?
Doing very well. The smoke coming down from the Canada is affecting us here in Minneapolis, but other than that, we're having a great summer so far.
Yeah, we've had a little bit of that smoke come down this way too, and some days it's been fairly strong, and I thought it was fog, and lo and behold, it was actually smoke. So it's a mess about everywhere, it feels like, on that smoke side.
If we could just bring some rain along with it, I think just about everybody in this area would be happy.
Yeah, I think you'd probably do a rain dance up there, and you'd probably make everybody happy by doing something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's been whaley wet in some places and really dry, and there's two extremes. Either you're really, really wet or really, really dry, and there's nothing in the middle.
But luckily for us, we're outside the big heat wave area, so at least if we don't have water, we're not baking it at the same time. So give and take a little bit.
That's right. All right. This is probably one of the this is one of my favorite things to talk about. We're going to talk about today, and the reason that I like it so much is it's the life cycle of the machine, or I like to call it, the washout cycle. What's that look like? How you working through those machines and the importance in the steps along the way and what that looks like. And one of which, it starts with that trade process when you first bring it in, and how that whole thing comes together. The pictures, the information you're gathering, the information that you're getting from pricing, all that stuff. That very first time that you touch that piece of equipment and what that looks like is such a key part into how the story ends, right?
Yes.
Because too many people start out, and I'm as guilty as anybody else is, where you start out, it's not as bad as it looks. Yeah, we're going to stretch this a little bit. It needs tires, but it looks like, next thing you know, it's 365 days later and you're still sitting with the same piece of equipment because you lied to yourself when you first started out. So, when you talk to a lot of dealers all over the place, what are you hearing from them on this trade process side, especially with the situation that we're seeing right now?
You're right. It's never a better deal than what it was right at the initial trade. It never gets better. After that, it's either too costly or stays around too long. Which that's what dealers are telling us right now as well, is planning that life cycle, getting it bought right. But that's where it's tricky, right? Getting it bought right means, what is that machine worth? Where is it going? Especially with some of the lead times right now. And then that's also is getting it evaluated fairly, given its options, given its accessories, given its hours, given the market it's in. Because no one tractor, no one combine, no one planter or sprayer is valued in a bubble, in a vacuum. It all takes that into account, and that's just that's getting more challenging with the machines getting more technology on them, more options, more high dollar options, more subscriptions even now. Heck, who would have thought that we had to worry about subscriptions, whether or not it was on the machine or not, or what kind of warranties are on there as well. So it really does come down to that buy. And that's the challenge, is how much effort, how much goes into there, because there isn't an easy button when it comes to that. But as good as you do there, that's what they're telling us as well, is that entire life cycle matters. If you don't get good pictures right away and that first impression is bad, okay, one chunk off, right? It's going to be more likely to that from there. And that's where some of the other tools of knowing your customer and knowing quotes and being proactive and those other things help as well. That's what they're trying to get a handle on, is how does this whole thing work together and how do we manage it at scale? Those are the two things I think that really play into it.
Yeah. So I did a bit of a kind of a project here a little bit, just to feel out some assumptions that I've had for a very long time. And basically what I did is I took our entire life of our business system and took everything into 100-day increments of how long it's been in inventory, and then just looked at where the margins were sitting at, what was the average days in inventory per in 100-hour chunks, how long were they in there? What was the difference between the original trade value and the price that the book value when it sold, trying to get a feel for what it's, I mean, and everything I thought came true, you keep stuff longer than 300 days, you lose money on it, right? But the funny thing was, it wasn't so much that was the big eye opener. It was from the first 100 days, how much money you made on something, to the second 100 days.
Yeah.
Fast that dropped. I mean, it went, in some cases, it might have been 15% margins. I mean, just dropped that quick. And that's the thing that I didn't anticipate to see that kind of a drop. When I figured, it's kind of playing around there, and you see a few things, and the variations wouldn't be that much difference between, day one and day, 199. You wouldn't think there'd be that much, but it's, and if you're a sales guy working off commission, it's a big deal to that, what those numbers are coming up at.
And what we're seeing in that place is, I'm assuming that's the break line, but somewhere in there is where you transition from being a proactive sales organization to, we have people identified, we're going to them as soon as it comes in, to now we're waiting for someone to call us up on the lot, and the marketing is kicking in. And that has, you're in a bigger pool of inventory, you're in a wider space, you're more competitive space once you've gotten out of waiting for somebody to call us. And I think that first 100 days or whatever that first period is when you're being the proactive. You've got 3 people you're shopping it to, you're giving first rights to somebody, and that's where they're getting the value of the dealership. They're getting the value of knowing the machine. It is truly something special during those first period of time. And then you go to just being another thing out there, and the other thing that you get on that first 100 days, and I don't know if you remember this, but back, you did once on the board about the loaf of bread and the $1 for the loaf of bread and how many times. Interest rates and terms right now are extremely important. So you look at, I make more money on the first 100 days, plus it frees up floor plan, it frees up interest expense, it frees up the rest of that stuff as well. It's never been more important to hit that first 100 days routinely like a machine.
Yeah. And that was the one thing. And the other funny thing about the project I did was, when I looked at that, was I took out 21 and 22 out of the mix. Okay. So it's how fast that stuff sold in that time frame, and how much that extended out the number of days you had, because you packed so many machines into that first 100 days that we were selling so quickly that it stretched out everything else behind it. So you actually gained about 100 days across the entire history of our business system by doing that. And I thought it was very interesting to see, looking at the machines that we had for a long time, where we started looking at, now you can tell we probably added, it jumped up $1,000 or something like that from the original trade value during that time frame. So, you're looking at, you had some batteries, you went out and put them in, and you did this, you had a flat tire, this, that, and the other thing. You had the traditional lot things come into play, little gremlins start popping up all over the place. And it was just amazing to watch how that played out. It was really, it was it's kind of one of those things where you knew the answer, but you didn't really know the answer. And I think that's what I found when I did that.
And looking at information like that, that's really intriguing, because you're able to ask questions of the information, and you're able to get some real reasons and root causes off of that, or at least correlation for some of that. We had a dealer recently ask us, Normally we count days in inventory off of when the machine came in. And now, certain product lines and such, it's more important to know, when did you create the stock unit? When did you first get record of that machine? When did you know it was coming in? And comparing that to the actual time on the ground. Yeah. And, there's no one right answer for a combine versus the tractor in that same analysis as well. So we've moved a long way from just old spreadsheets and pulling things together to now where we can do a lot of those what if, and the amount of effort that it takes to do those things to uncover that. That'll change a lot of ideas. Just that one thing, knowing that you don't have 6 months to figure it out. You got 3 at the most.
You really do. And that's the thing. You sit there and talk, like, life cycle situations, that timeline has been greatly compressed just by what you talked about with the interest rates and those kind of things, where we used to say, whatever, it's been in for 4 months, whatever, well, that 4 months quickly turns into 8 months or 9 months or something like that. And the way things are today at 7.5%, 8% interest rates on a $400,000 piece of equipment. I mean, holy crap, man, you're almost to that 1% a month number. It's not that far away. It's 0.75%, 65 basis points. I mean, you got some real money that you're talking about here, and it's not so much the interest rate, but it's the number that the interest rate is compounding off of. That's the real problem. That's again, going back to doing that, and then you start looking at some of these automation tools that are out there for automating some of this, to where, I've always been on this quest for, hey, let's send the evaluation in, and then let's pop out, the 5 guys you should go call on for that piece of equipment. Let's get that thing rolling. I mean, even if you don't pre-sell it before it comes in, at least you've planted that seed someplace with 4 or 5 or whatever many guys that are going to go in and start really thinking about it in their head, like, it is time. I mean, I trade my combine every 3 years, or hey, I get a new tractor every 5 years or something like that. You start planting that seed, and sooner or later you have something to harvest.
It is, and the manufacturers are helping us in that space. We're starting to get more from the financial roles and a little bit more prediction coming from them, but it's still just one part of the equation. There isn't one piece of data that makes it all work. It's how you bring it together. And the other piece you just talked about was this whole life cycle. We've got to start thinking about things about how do we get it out of the place when we get it in? How do we maximize it? It might be out of season. The farmer may not want it, but yet they're more than willing to let us keep it for another 4 months. And that's where I see us getting creative on the sales side to facilitate the life cycle of that used equipment. Maybe give a little bit of an interest waiver, maybe give something else a little bit more there for that. To allow you to get it out, a combine off the lot in March instead of September or August, when the customer would normally want that.
All right, so now when you're looking, that's one thing too. So now if you take it like what you just talked about, so if you know you're at a place where you're gonna sit on something for 4 months, and if you have 8% interest right now, you're looking at 0.66% per month that you're sitting on something.
Yeah. That
interest waiver, if you're looking at a $400,000 piece of equipment, let's just do the math on that real quick. $400,000 times 0.0066. That's $2,600 a month that you're sitting on that. So you take that times 4, and you're sitting at
$10,000 just for
$1,500. I mean, you could probably buy an interest waiver for cheaper than that for 4 months. You know what I mean? So I mean, think about that stuff. And I think that's the key thing about some of this too, when you're looking at how some of these things are working together, and your automation, how those things are playing out. If you can find those customers right away, and you can say, hey, we're going to give you a 4-month waiver, whatever it is that we're, 6-month waiver, whatever that is, I think you have some opportunities there to do a lot of things on the creative financing side of things that you wouldn't be able to do normally. And I think we're getting back to that. So this is almost like 2014, 15, 16 all over again, where it was leasing that was making those things happen. Now we're going to have to be creative on both, balloon payments and leases and structure and all that stuff. Now
there was a while when interest was cheap, everybody wanted 0 for 60, and that's not going to pull the same levers anymore with the market. It's you got to start thinking about that as well from your side. And that automation piece you talked about is the number of buyers you got is different. If you've got 5 of them already and you're going to get another 2 in, you got to approach that life cycle a little bit differently. What's your days in inventory? How much of it do you have to sell? What's your take rate onto that as well? Because we're getting back to that. We're getting back to being heavy in certain areas, and machines unfortunately are competing with each other. The 10 to come in isn't as worth as much because you're going to have to get a lot more creative on moving it than the first one was you brought in that you needed, and you had 4 people to sell it to.
Yeah.
3 people.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too. When you start looking at life cycle, and that's just something I've been talking about here lately is, I'm just going to use planners, for example. Every planner on the marketplace every planner anywhere is in direct competition with each other, right? Whether it's on your lot, the new one coming out of the factory, or the one at the farmer's place, because upgrade kits, right? So you can take any planner now and you can upgrade it, and it is now a viable piece of equipment that is in direct competition with something else. Starting to kind of see some of that with sprayers too, where there's some of the stuff starting to come out with sprayers that's going to be a little bit different than, kind of do those things where you can start kind of making it new-ish, and with different things that you're doing there. So that changes the whole conversation of what you're doing there. And then what's that customer base look like and how you interact with those things. And then when that piece comes in on trade, what do you do then? What's that life cycle look like and those kind of things. So taking the data that you have inside of your system right now and starting to kind of paint a picture of what that looks like long-term. And I know you guys have automation stuff at AM, what that looks like. What are you able to do with the automation that you have, and what are give us an example of what something might look like?
There's really 2 areas I want to talk about, which is bringing more information at the time of sale, and then also bridging that time lapse a lot of times. And I'll start with the second one first. You talked about inspections and reconditioning and all of that stuff, but those decisions are all made as you're buying it, and you might have 2, 3, 4 months between the time that you made that decision when the machine is available to do that work, get it ready for sale, put it on the front line, whatever else. And that's a time gap that you've got to bridge. And that's where automation comes into play, is because it doesn't do any good to go back to the service department and say, in 4 months, you're going to get a green sprayer and we want you to do X, Y, and Z to it and hope you remember. That ain't going to work. But that's what automation can do when we've got it built in. When you hit the mark sold, it asks you 2 or 3 questions. Is it pre-sold? If so, to who? What type of inspection did you intend to do? What type of reconditioning did you plan to do on the trades? And then we kind of just let the technology hold that for us for a little bit, and then spring that on the service department when the machine comes in. So it's not only the right information, but it's at the right time. And that's a big deal when you're talking life cycle of the machine, workflow process is going through. It's getting the right information in front of the person at the right time. Now, the other piece was coming back into how do we do the inspections, tracking that, and how do we bring the customer or the salesperson that information up front. And on a previous podcast, we talked about our collaboration with Tractor Zoom, where during that trade evaluation piece, we're bringing you average values, comparable machines right there to the used equipment evaluator. Well, now we've taken that same approach and put it right on the stock unit page. So if you're comparing a machine, you're working with a customer on a machine, right there on the machine, you've got the same thing. What's the value of the closest 10 comparables? Where are they? What are they? So if you're either getting negotiated, you've got a lot more information to go off of. Or if you're out of line, you can make that call right then, and you don't have to just pass on it and go later. You have that information not only when you buy it, but when you're trying to sell it as well. And we get it in front of the front line folks as well. So we're continually educating them, giving them more information up front, making it, silly easy to know that stuff, because they're not having to go look it up just to do that. It's just right on the page, just another piece of information along with the picture and the price. Here's the average comparables right now on this market.
Yep.
And that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's to your point. It's a couple things that I've learned along the way is, you make all your money when you buy it, right? Yep. And it's no matter how much lipstick you put on a pig, it's still a pig. And that's those 2 things are so important when you're looking at. Don't fool yourself when you're trying to price something and try to think that, you know what, we just get an extra $10,000 and it'll be fine. We don't need to do this. We're going to make the recon instead of whatever.
Yep.
$5,000. We're gonna leave recon out altogether because it's just all warranty stuff. It never fails that when things should go wrong, they do go wrong. That's probably one of the golden things about this business.
Well, and it's the other side of the equation too. You talked about perfume on a pig, but what if you do have the fair winning pig? You got to make sure you get top dollar for it, and you do that by saying, "Here's the 3 inspection work orders. Look at all the stuff we replaced. It's been in here on a regular basis. We've got full maintenance. It's had full warranty. Here's the information, Mr. Customer, Mrs. Customer," and it differentiates yourself as well. Now, could you do that on each and every machine? Yeah, but that's a large amount of time. Or you could be 3 clicks and say, "Show me the work orders, print, show work order, print, hand it to the customer." That's the other piece of automation is not just a robot doing something in the background, but how do we feed you the right information in an easy to use place? And that's what gets you top dollar when you got a fair winning pig. Yeah. When you got that best one out there, when you got that perfect machine, you want to get top dollar for it.
Sure. And that's the other thing, telling that story like you're talking about there, that story that you're telling to somebody is they don't know who the customer is unless they're their neighbor. You know what I mean? Yeah. And if they're 200 miles away and they're coming in saying, "Hey, I want to talk to you about this combine I saw," or calling you up on the phone, you should be able to tell that story to have them romanticize that piece of equipment just like the neighbor would about what's there, and tell that story, what that looks like and what that means. And that's good pictures, that's good inspections, that's good just quality information about the piece of equipment that you have. Sets that stage, you know what I mean? Yep. And you can start going down that path and having that conversation.
We don't have all the features right now, and I'll tell you, last week I was working with a dealer. They had a feature that kind of, that was a smart one, and I'll share it with the team here. It's how do we automatically feed that work order so it's as easy for the customer to see as a picture? Do we automate creating a picture that goes in the carousel and shows the history? Do we do something else behind the scenes that makes it easy for the customer to even see that story? And we've seen those nice banners and the perfect pictures and all of those things. How do we bring the data? How do we do some of those things here that's sample history, oil sampling history, etc., and make it as easy for the customer to see as it was a picture? I don't know how we're going to solve that, but I can tell you it's going to be important, as when we do solve it.
Yep, absolutely. It's going to be the tools that we're using today are going to change quite a bit just by what we're doing, just because of all the this business is changing so rapidly that if you are trying to continue to do things you've done since the 90s and think it's going to still work the same way it's always had, it's just not going to. I mean, it's just what the customer wants, and how you have to interact with the equipment now is all. It's like sometimes you have 2 customers. You got the machine that's a customer because it's talking to you, and you got the guy driving the machine that's talking to you as well. So I mean, it's just like it's a whole different landscape we've ever seen before, and we're going to have more data-driven decisions than we've ever had before.
We really focus a lot on the equipment side. What do we know about the machine? But you nailed it there. The other half of this equation is there is a customer at the other end of that. Yep. And, we've been talking with some other partners in this space. The one nice thing is there's lots of folks trying to tackle this. And it's how can we also bring you information about the person you're talking with, or 2 or 3 people that have. Because if you're trying to predict off of just buying history, then you really have limited your opportunity. What if you could start bringing in not only here's people we sold to before that look like this person, but here's some people we haven't. Here's some people that meet the demographics, or here's the common type of place. One idea that was presented up was like, how do you use other aspects of that customer to understand what type of customer they are? Do they plant this brand of seed versus that brand of seed? That tells you something about the customer that might push them to one solution versus the other, and that's where the industry is going. Is how do we bring all of that together into one place? That's why we build what we build. Is that number one thing we do is consolidation or integration, and it's just to bring everything into one place. I say, just imagine if you knew what you already knew at the time you needed to know it. And that's your CRM history, your inventory history, your sales history, your work order history. How can I access that easily? Inspections are a big one now as well. Just with tires getting to be so expensive and all these options, and is it still on it? Is it not on there as well? And taking pictures, and it's just it's really an important aspect to understand not only the value, but that inspection as well.
Yep, for sure. Never been a more important time, since I've been, since I got out of college, it was always, you got to be fluid, you got to be adaptive to change, and this, that, another thing, and it's, everyone's kind of said that. It's truly that time right now. You've got to be fluid, and you've got to be adaptive to change, and you've got to be thinking 5 years down the road, every time you start thinking about something, because that next iteration of whatever that is going to be so much different than what we're looking at right now. And you didn't have to worry about that 10 years ago.
And the other idea besides change is how ideas recycle. The whole idea of comparing your inventory to current market value is a great idea. It was a great idea 30 years ago. It was a great idea 20 years ago. It was a great idea 10 years ago. The difference is right now, we can give you that on one screen and do it automatically in the background and say, this machine's too high, this machine's in spec with the market, this machine's not. To where you get a little bell, hey, this machine has, in the last month, the value has changed this much, and it's now put this machine at risk. It's the same idea that we had 30 years ago. Compare your inventory versus the market. So I'm asking you, just kind of revisit the good ideas you've had and say, are there better ways of doing things? And it's not just coming up with brand new toys. It's the foundations at time as well.
Yeah. For sure. Jason, I think that's probably a good place to stop, man. Folks want to reach out to you guys and get more information about what you're doing over at Anvil. What's the best way to do that?
AnvilAppWorks.com. We've got blogs and a couple forms there to fill out. We'll give you some case studies, or just sales at AnvilAppWorks.com. You'll come straight to me and we'll have a conversation. So we'll look forward to it.
Awesome, man. You're going to be at the Moving Iron Summit come up here in September, and you're going to have your booth there. So a whole thing set up there so people can take a look at what you guys are doing.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. All right, I'm Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Moving Iron LLC. Go to LinkedIn at Moving Iron Podcast. Check the video version of this out over on the YouTube channel, which is the Moving Iron Podcast YouTube channel. Check that out. Go to Moving Iron LLC for everything Moving Iron related and get all the information for the Moving Iron Summit right there. September 11th through the 13th. If you want to save a little money, be one of the first 150 to sign up, and Axon will give you a free, or not free, they won't give you anything for free. It's going to knock off $50. So don't tell that Casey said you're getting anything for free. But you'll get $50 off your registration fee, so take advantage of that. Like I said, you'll see Jason and his crew down there at the booth, so that if you have any questions for those guys, you'll see them there in person live. So with that, I'm Casey Seymour, Jason Hoult. It's Moving Iron, folks. Out.
Moving higher in the 21st century.